Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to talk to you guys a little bit about why I personally use and advocate the floor press, but why it's not for everyone. So let me put on my +5 out of weaponsmithing, work on skilling my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. Alright, I personally use the floor press as a primary movement right now. I'm not actually benching on a bench anymore. I'm using the floor press, and it will carry over for someone like me. Now, a lot of people are going to look at that and say, well, the floor press is a partial movement. It's not going to carry over. You're always talking about getting a pause at the bottom, and that's right. That is correct. But what people need to realize is that your biomechanics on the floor press are going to change as you gain muscle mass. Meaning, you're limited on the range of motion when your arms touch the floor, right? When you get down here, they touch the floor and you're done. For someone who hasn't built a large amount of muscle in their torso, it is going to be a partial. In fact, a lot of guys do the floor press and like the bar stock 6 inches from my chest. How in the world is that full range of motion? And what they're forgetting is that a lot of people who've already built their base, if you've built your base, because we'll get to the benefits of the floor press in a minute. If you've built your base, you've done lots of deadlifting, lots of rows, lots of chins, you're going to have added inches of muscle to your back. And you guys have seen enough photos of my back, and there's even footage up of me floor pressing on my Instagram for those who check. The bar touches my chest. And I don't have short forearms. I have fairly long arms. And it's because I do so much deadlifting and so much rowing with so much volume that I have a lot of back thickness. And furthermore, it's not just about your relaxed back thickness. It's about if you get under a bench press and you have a lot of back thickness, even when you do a bench, you're pulled back into scapular retraction. That pulls muscle back underneath you. And when you do that, it brings the chest and everything up. And when you realize that, the more mass that you add to your back and the more meat that you can put underneath you in scapular retraction, the more range of motion you're going to add to a floor press, because it pulls your entire shoulder joint further up because of the meat of your back. And so at a certain threshold, the more muscle that you add to your back, the less of a partial the floor press becomes. So when we talk about the floor press in many cases being a partial, that's for novice lifters. I don't advocate a novice lifter do the floor press. I'm going to say if you can't deadlift at least 450, you can't row strict pin leg row 225 for reps, probably don't need to be doing the floor press. I would never ever advocate it for the novice lifter. Well, I might in certain circumstances if it's all they had. But the novice lifter should probably be doing the flat bench, mainly because it's a longer range of motion exercise. You're going to get the full range of motion. Not going to be limited by something like that. But the thing is, in a lot of cases, the floor press is easier to do in a gym, depending on how your gym is set up. Now, for me personally, I have access, and this is the way the industry is going. If you guys are still going to some of these silly mom and pop gyms that are still bodybuilder oriented, you don't have access always to a lot of racks and things. But if people actually look around, I think you're going to be surprised how modern gyms are equipped. Like I personally, without even buying any new gym memberships, and without even training at any gym that you guys have ever seen me film at, just gyms that I personally have memberships and access to right now, I have at least 3 gyms that I can get to in 30 minutes or less, anywhere between a 5 and a 30-minute drive, that have at least 6 racks. Somewhere between 6 and 9 power racks. Therefore, I have access to more racks than I do flat benches. Furthermore, in commercial gyms, the biggest problem you run into is dealing with spotters on your bench press, the risk of getting pinned, and I've shown videos on how to bail out from under that, but there's still the chance in a more crowded gym of hitting someone with the bar when you put it on the floor in front of you. So again, no need for spotters, no need to deal with that, and access to equipment. In many cases, the floor press is easier to just set up and do. No need for spotters. No need for any of that. You don't even need a bench. You just need the racks. And in cases of a lot of modern gyms, the way things are going now, lots of gyms have functional strength areas. A lot of your big Globo gyms have functional strength areas. In fact, you're more likely at a global gym today to be able to find one that has 6 or 10 power racks than you are at some of these older school mom and pop gyms, because a lot of them are still built around the whole bodybuilding concept, and they're still using the way people were training all through the 90s and stuff. So the reality is a lot of functional strength is going to be found in global gyms. You're going to find CrossFit gyms. You're finding more of a movement in that direction. So actually just having extra power racks that are free that no one's using is actually more common. And at least it's available to me because I'm careful in where I research gyms and where I choose to go so that I have access to racks, because I pretty much train exclusively in those areas. I don't train these days outside of the functional fitness type areas of a gym anymore. I just have no use for it because I just do big barbell movements and GBP work. It's the only reason I go to a gym. Anything else I could do at home. So in that case, it's an issue of access. So why the floor press? Well, if you have enough overall torso thickness that the floor press becomes either a full range of motion or very close to a full range of motion exercise, it really puts a lot of focus. It takes your ability to cheat out. So if your goal is to maximize your pec and tricep size and development, it brings a lot to the table. It breaks up the eccentric concentric chain, and it forces you to learn to explode harder with more difficulty storing energy than the bench press does. So for people who are just trying to build more power and more explosiveness, even who want to have it carry over to their bench press, the floor press brings a lot to the table. I think in a lot of ways it allows for a person to maximize their explosive potential more. It removes the ability to cheat. It's kind of like the bench press, you have the ability to cheat no matter what. People need to understand that. You have the ability to use leg drive even on a pause bench. The floor press takes that out. It's basically like comparing the push press to a strict press, although not as extreme. It's the same concept. It's like saying, why would a person ever do a strict standing press instead of a floor press? Because you remove the ability to use leg drive. And if a person really wants to focus more on starting the weight moving completely with things like pecs, triceps, front delts, it brings a lot to the table. I think it allows potentially for slightly better development of those because it forces them to engage a little bit harder out of the bottom. And I'm not worried about training additional leg drive and stuff, just like I don't push press right now because I do so much squatting, so much deadlifting. I do all these other standing exercises. It's someone like my case, it's my one lazy exercise. It's okay to have one or two lazy exercises that don't use leg drive. I think that's perfectly fine, even for someone who's training to be a strength athlete, someone who's training to be stronger. I think it's okay to have a couple of exercises that don't use leg drive. In my case, it's the floor press, maybe the strict press. You're still standing though. So I would say for me, the things that don't use legs at all would be my floor press and my weighted chin-ups, right? Because everything else I do is standing. Everything else has a degree of leg drive. It has more core involvement, all of that stuff, because that's the way that I train. But I think the floor press kind of gives me a little bit of a break from that. No legs are involved, just like with my chin-ups. And again, I think that for me personally, it's just easier to set up. I don't have to deal with the risk of anyone else getting hurt around me. I don't have to deal with maybe asking for a spotter. I don't have to run any of the risks that you have on the bench press. And I think the risks on the bench press are relatively small. But I'm just in a situation with my own training to where I have access to so many racks that I'm actually more likely to find a free power rack these days than I am to find a free bench press. Because a lot of the gyms I go to only have 3 flat benches, and they're always being used. They're always in use. Anytime you go in, there's someone on them. You're going to have to work in, and I'm just more likely to find a free rack because the average gym I go to has about 8 power racks. So again, it's just a lot easier to have access to. And for me, I happen to like the floor press. I enjoy it. And when I eventually go back to bench pressing, when you develop a very, very strong proficiency on something like the floor press, it really forces you to overload and develop your pectorals and your triceps and to train from a dead stop over and over and over. When you do go back to being able to use a little bit of leg drive and explode off of the chest more, your numbers really go up. Like, I know that for me personally, the floor press has always been the best exercise for improving my bench press. For me historically, and so therefore I'm using it exclusively as a build-up exercise to build the size and strength of my pecs and everything back up. And yeah, and it works pretty well. And I'm at a point now to where my floor press is already considerably stronger than my bench press was when I switched over a couple months back when I started benching again. My floor press is now stronger, so I know when I do eventually go back to flat benching, my flat bench is just going to accelerate. It's going to go up really, really fast again because I will have already developed all of those muscles to move the weight. I throw the leg drive and the tightness back in, and it's going to be a cakewalk. So all in all, I like the floor press. I think it's a great movement. I think it's probably the single best, just my personal experience, my personal opinion, nothing more. Take it as nothing beyond that. I think it's about the best assistance lift out there for the bench press, and I think in many cases it can be used as a primary exercise as well. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.